Your mother thinks you work at a bank. Not a specific bank, just the bank, the way she said it for 9 years, the way she said it to her hairdresser last month, and to her sister at Thanksgiving, and to the pharmacist who asked how her son was doing. You've never corrected her, not because you're hiding anything, but because the actual answer takes longer to explain than either of you has patience for at a kitchen counter on a Sunday. This is what $3.2 billion actually looks like. It looks like a man standing in his mother's kitchen in Dayton, Ohio, eating cereal out of the same bowl he used in high school, while she asks if the bank is treating him well. The 14 months, you weren't trying to build anything when it started. You were 26, laid off from a logistics software company that ran out of runway, sitting in a one-bedroom apartment with $4,200 in savings and a half-finished side project you'd been tinkering with for 9 months. A small tool that helped warehouse managers reconcile inventory counts without the spreadsheet errors that cost their companies thousands every quarter. You weren't building a company, you were building something to put on your resume. A former coworker asked if she could use it for her new employer's warehouse. Then, her employer's competitor heard about it. Then, someone from a regional distribution chain emailed asking if it could integrate with their existing system. And you said yes before you'd checked whether it actually could. 14 months in, you had 11 paying customers and $340,000 in annual recurring revenue, which felt enormous and also barely covered your rent, and a part-time contractor named Priya who'd been helping you on weekends because she believed in the tool more than you did some days. Your mother knew you had a computer thing going. That's the phrase she used. A computer thing. You let it sit there, mostly because explaining recurring revenue and integration partnerships to someone who still uses a paper checkbook register felt like more work than it was worth. The term sheet. 3 years in, a venture fund offered to lead a Series A, $2 million for 18% of the company. You'd never seen that many zeros attached to your own name on a single document. You signed it in a coffee shop because the fund's lawyer insisted on meeting in person, and you remember being more nervous about spilling coffee on the signature page than about what you'd just agreed to. Your mother asked if this meant you'd gotten a promotion. You told her, sort of. It was easier than the alternative. The next 4 years were the part nobody puts in a highlight reel. You hired engineers you couldn't really afford yet. You lost your second biggest customer to a competitor with better marketing and worse software, and it took you 6 weeks to stop checking their churn date obsessively. You slept on a cot in the office twice during a launch week that nearly broke the platform. Priya, the contractor who'd believed in it on weekends, became your VP of engineering and the only person who'd seen every version of the company, including the ones that almost didn't survive. By year 7, you had 340 employees and a software platform running inventory logistics for some of the largest warehouse operators in the country. Annual revenue crossed $180 million. None of this showed up at your mother's kitchen table, because none of this is a sentence you can say to someone over a bowl of cereal without it sounding like bragging. And you've never been able to figure out how to say true things about your own success without it landing that way. The acquisition. The call came on a Tuesday from a logistics conglomerate that had been quietly buying up software companies in your space for 3 years. They wanted the whole platform. The number on the table, after 2 months of due diligence and a negotiation that nearly fell apart twice over an indemnification clause neither side would budge on, was $3.4 billion. Your stake, after dilution across 4 funding rounds and the option pool you'd granted employees along the way, came out to $3.2 billion. You found out the deal had officially closed while sitting in a parking garage because the wire confirmation came through on your phone 2 minutes before you were supposed to walk into your mother's house for her birthday dinner. You sat in the car for a moment, then you turned off your phone, walked inside, and helped her carry a sheet cake to the dining room table. She asked how work was going. You said busy, but good. She said that's nice, and asked if you'd tried the new salad dressing she found at the store, the one with less sugar in it. You said you'd try it. The cake had her name spelled wrong by the bakery, Carol instead of Carol, and she laughed about it the way she laughs about most small inconveniences, like the universe is gently teasing her and she's decided to be amused rather than annoyed. Nobody at that table knew that 2 minutes earlier, in a parking garage 4 blocks away, your life had changed in a way that doesn't have a normal-sized word for it. What she actually knows. Here's what your mother does know. because you've told her in pieces over the years, in language calibrated to make sense without raising more questions than it answers. You work in software. The company does well. You don't need help with money, which she occasionally still offers anyway, because offering is a habit older than your bank account and harder to break than either of you expected. She doesn't know the number. She's never asked for the number. You've come to understand that this isn't avoidance on her part. She genuinely doesn't think in those terms. She thinks in terms of whether you're eating enough, whether you seem stressed, whether the company is the kind of place that would let you go home for her birthday on a Tuesday in the middle of a deal closing. Those are the metrics that matter to her, and you've started to suspect they might be better metrics than the ones you spent 11 years optimizing for. The bank thing started as a misunderstanding nobody corrected. Years ago, at a family gathering, an uncle asked what you did, and your mother, trying to be helpful, said something about computers and money, and your uncle said, "Oh, like a bank," and your mother said, "Sure, like a bank," and the phrase calcified into the explanation she's used ever since because it's short. It satisfies people at parties, and correcting it would require explaining 9 years of context to people who were only being politely curious in the first place. You let it stand, partly because the real explanation is exhausting, partly because something in you likes that your mother's understanding of your life has nothing to do with the number. In every other room you walk into, board meetings, due diligence calls, the lawyer's office where you signed away your old company for 9 zeros, the number is the entire conversation. At her kitchen table, it's never once come up, and you've realized you need that room to exist somewhere in your life. The phone call you almost made, 8 months after the deal closed, your mother mentioned, in the middle of an unrelated conversation about her knee acting up, that she was thinking about retiring from the school district 2 years later than she'd originally planned. The pension formula worked out better if she stayed until 65 instead of 63, she explained, and 2 more years of substitute teaching coordination wasn't going to kill her. You did the math without meaning to. 2 years of a job that paid her $41,000 annually, a job she'd been doing since you were in middle school, a job that required her to be at a desk by 7:15 every morning, managing a spreadsheet of which retired teachers were available to cover which classes on which day. You could have ended that conversation in 4 words. Don't go back. Retire now. You could have transferred enough money to replace her pension twice over before she'd finished her sentence about her knee. You didn't say it. Not because you didn't want to help, because you understood something about your mother that took you years to fully see clearly. The job isn't just income to her. It's a building she's walked into every weekday morning for 19 years, a set of coworkers who know her coffee order, a structure that exists independent of you, your company, or anything that happened in a parking garage on a Tuesday. Taking that away from her, even by offering something that looks like a gift, would be removing something she never asked you to remove. So instead, you asked questions about the knee, about whether the desk job was hard on it, about whether she'd thought about cutting back to part-time instead of full retirement, which the district apparently allowed if you'd been there long enough. She hadn't considered it. By the end of the call, she said she'd look into it. She emailed you 3 weeks later, more excited than you'd heard her in months, about a part-time scheduling coordinator arrangement that let her keep her pension trajectory while cutting her hours almost in half. She'd worked it out herself, with the district's HR office, using information you'd pointed her toward but never touched directly. You never told her what you could have simply paid for instead. You're not sure you ever will. Not because the secrecy matters to you anymore. At this point, the secrecy is almost incidental. But because the version of this where she solved her own scheduling problem is the version she gets to be proud of, and that pride is worth more than the convenience of just writing a check. What the bank thing actually protects. There's a version of your life, The one that exists in boardrooms and term sheets and a closing document with more zeros in it than your mother has ever seen on a single page, where you are extremely visible. Reporters have asked for interviews. A business magazine wanted to put you on a list. You declined both, not out of modesty exactly, but because visibility in that world comes with an entirely different set of obligations. People wanting things, people watching for mistakes, people recalibrating how they treat you based on a number you didn't ask them to know. Your mother's kitchen is the one room where none of that exists, where you are still just her son who works in computers at something like a bank, who comes home for birthdays even when the timing is inconvenient, who eats cereal out of the same bowl from high school because somehow nobody's ever thrown it away. You used to think the bank misunderstanding was something you were getting away with. Now you think it might be the most honest relationship you have left. Everyone else in your life relates to a version of you calibrated by a balance sheet. Your mother relates to you. Just you, the actual unfiltered, slightly tired, still eats cereal for dinner, sometimes version that existed before any of the zeros showed up. The $3.2 billion is real. It sits in accounts and instruments and a foundation you're slowly building to give most of it away eventually, in ways that don't require anyone's gratitude or attention. But it has never once been in that kitchen, and as long as you have any say in it, it never will be. The cake still says Carol instead of Carol. You've never corrected that either. Some misunderstandings, it turns out, are worth protecting on purpose.